Welcome back, JDM family. In this episode, I'm showing you 10 easy steps on how you can perform an injector seal replacement on the RB26 DETT, the engine which is in the Skyline. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video so you don't miss any details, alright? Coming up. Before we start, make sure you perform these steps on a cold engine, since this ensures a lower risk of engine fire due to potential fuel spills. But don't be scared. Whatever you do, make sure to stick around to the end of the video so you don't miss any details. But before we get our hands dirty, and also, which is our step number 1, we need to relieve the pressure on the fuel rail and regulator by starting the engine and then pulling the fuel pump fuse. Now this will drastically reduce, as I said, the amount of fuel spills when removing the fuel rail later on. So it's the 15 amp fuse
under the dash.
Step 2. Remove the strut bar, and in my case I also need to remove the engine damper, but it should be enough to just loosen the one side and just tilt it over for more clearance. Then remove the cam breather hose, the 3 5mm hex key bolts from the injector wiring cover, and this will give us a little bit more flexibility. And also disconnect the 2 connectors close to the torpedo wall and the ones in the front of the rail, also to get some more room. Remove the 2 12mm bolts holding the fuel rail. Disconnect every individual connector, then gradually ease the fuel rail up and out. There's no real need to remove the fuel connection at the front of the rail, as we have enough space to work. Step 4. Ease out the injectors from the fuel rail one at a time and keep a rag close to catch the excess fuel. Then bring the injectors over to our workbench. So here I've laid out all of the injectors with the insulators and the O-rings. As you can see, the O-rings were not in the best shape. So we got new ones, replacements, fresh from Nissan, genuine parts. Sadly, one injector was broken during the dismount. Step 5. Clean all the injectors using a mild dissolvent. I just did this pre-cutting to this video, and make sure you remove the O-rings and both the top and bottom insulators, because we're going to replace all of them. As you can see here, I've lined up the new ones and I'm just putting everything back together, as you can see. So I've taken all the O-rings, put them in a bag, added some silicone grease, so I can just apply that grease to all of the O-rings, and now it's ready to be assembled on top of the injector. And this still being Corona times, remember to protect yourselves, boys and girls. So I gently put the O-ring inside of the slide on the one hand, and then I just sort of pull with 1 finger, 2 fingers, and just roll it over the edge. Make sure to grease the inside of the edge where the O-ring is supposed to lie, and also on the outside of the O-ring, just apply a nice coating for when it's going to rest against the fuel rail later. Step 6. Make sure you have removed any residual fuel spills left from earlier in the process, as this can create an interesting story for the local newspaper when going on your brisky test drive later on. So when ready to start, then mount the injectors on the engine side first, making sure not to remove any of the silicone grease that we applied recently. And then line up the tops of the injectors with the rail and ease it on, carefully pressing the rail onto the injectors with an even force. Put the two 12mm bolts back in place, tightening them first at hand, making sure that the rail is still with an even force applied onto the injectors. Then tighten first one side, go to the other, and then evenly disperse the force from the rail back onto the engine and on the injectors. Step 7. Reconnect all of the wiring connectors, the 3 5mm hex bolts on the wiring cover, and if like me you have an engine damper, I found it a good moment to reapply this as well. And end this step with putting back on the cam breather hose. Step 8. When back inside the car, make sure to put the fuel pump fuse back in its place, and also make sure to prime the fuel pump to rebuild the fuel pressure in both the rail and regulator before starting the car. This is very important. Step 9. While the engine is still running, check every individual injector thoroughly for any leaks. If you're good, then go for a quick brisky drive and then check again. If everything is still good, then reinstall the strut bar. 10. The last step is of course the most important of all the steps, and that is to give yourself a compliment for a job well done. Well done, self 5. Then just close the hood and have fun with your JDM ride. Unless you have other shit to fix as well, then you better get to it. Thanks for watching all the way through. Okay, I need to do that again. All right. Thanks for watching all the way through this episode. I really appreciate it. It warms my JDM heart. Much love. And if you haven't already, make sure to hammer fist that subscribe button, tickle the like, and finger that bell so you don't miss anything, brother. All right, catch you on the next one. All right. Yeah, it's fun.
Fix the car.
No.